It's an honor to be on my feet here today and enter into debate in the response to the throne speech. And I want to start by, as members on both sides have been doing regularly here, is saying how proud and thankful I am for all those that support me in the work that I do here in the legislature. I want to thank my family and my friends that support me back home and ensure that while I'm here in Regina, that the rest of my family is being taken care of, and that my home is looked after. And I want to really say thank you to them and really appreciate the support, the love, the care that they extend to me so that I can be here in Regina for session. I want to thank my staff, in particular Carrie Schaefer, whom I've mentioned before and is really sort of the rock in my constituency office, who took on the role as constituency assistant with, not really a broad base of experience, but definitely the qualities and the attitude to allow her to grow into the role and perform so superbly. And so, Carrie, if you're listening, I want to say thank you so much for all that you do. She's been supported also by other part-time staff from time to time, Nadia Risto, Christine, Graham, and others who provide some backup support. And I'm really grateful for the work that they do, meeting the needs of constituents in the casework that comes across our desk, ensuring that it's handled professionally and in a timely fashion, not just the work of my constituents, but also those who come forward with concerns in my critic areas as well. It's a big job, it's an important job, and I'm so appreciative of the work that Carrie and the rest of the staff do to ensure that it's made with the highest level of professionalism and duty of care. Of course, I also want to acknowledge and thank the people of my constituency, Saskatoon-Nutana, for the great honor to be able to serve them here in the Assembly, and for the work that they do that is contributing to the vibrancy of our community, to the success of our community. I think that the people of Saskatoon-Nutana are unmatched in their dedication, their commitment, their level of participation and engagement as citizens here in Saskatchewan to ensure that we are the best place to live in all of Canada, that we have programs and supports that really ensure that we're taking care of one another and meeting the needs of citizens, but also having fun along the way. And I think of the work that is done to support so many community events like the Fringe Festival, which is held in my constituency annually. And of course, that's a wider initiative than just Saskatoon-Nutana, but we're so proud to host the Fringe year in and year out, especially now, after a few tough years coming out of the pandemic with lower attendance and the rationalization that has required, but they still manage to pull off a quality event every year that is well received by the community and people who look to the arts as part of what is contributing to the vibrancy in our community and makes it such a fun and attractive place to live. I mean, when we think about all the things that we have to be grateful for living here in Saskatchewan and what makes it such a great place. You know, certainly having that pride of place and a range of cultural and artistic opportunities and events that people can be an attractor to Saskatchewan and to Saskatoon. And it's the good people of Saskatoon, Nutana, that contribute in big ways and small ways to that vibrancy. I also, just as another example, want to mention the Broadway Street Fair, held every September by the merchants in the Business Improvement District of Saskatoon, Nutana. Again, an incredible day that brings people from across the city to experience the cultural vibrancy of the Broadway district, the many businesses, local businesses, locally owned and operated businesses that can offer local merchandise, local content, locally owned, and give it that special quality and character that Nutana has become known for, our reputation as a thriving hub of local enterprise, and not the least of which would be also the Steep Hill Co-op that I had the honour of delivering a member statement on earlier today. So whether it's cooperatives or the Broadway Collective, where I have my office that's able to offer a hub for entrepreneurs, for professionals, for small businesses to be able to have a place to connect, to make connections and increase their networks, be able to access their clients and the wider community. It's these kinds of innovative and entrepreneurial endeavors in my home constituency of Saskatoon, Nutana, that I am so proud to represent their interests, their aspirations, their visions for how to have a great community here in Saskatchewan. And I thank them for everything that they do. I thank them for the opportunity to represent them here in this assembly. And I can't say just how proud that makes me. To be able to represent here in the assembly their concerns, their hopes and dreams, and their needs as we march onwards towards what has become, quite frankly, an uncertain future marked by recent geopolitical events beyond our borders that have spelt rising uncertainty and inflation. So on the one hand, we have great pride, we have great hope, we have great optimism in the great land of Saskatoon-Nutana, and as a buffer towards those larger geopolitical factors that the member for Regina Rosemont spoke of earlier this week, and provides that backdrop and context for where we find ourselves today as a province. But when I think about the pride that I feel for my community and my role representing the constituency, and I think about the pride that they feel and the potential that we possess as a province, I want to focus my comments here, because without pride in who you are as a people and as a nation, you lose hope. You lose conviction. You doubt your collective abilities and your spark fades out, and that is something that we absolutely must guard against. People need hope. They need to be proud. They need to be proud of where they are from. And Saskatchewan people more broadly, you know, we are known for our pride. We're proud of our sports teams. We're proud of the hospitality that we're known for. We're proud of being a welcoming place for people across the globe in their time in need. And that's the Saskatchewan I want to be proud of. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you a little story. In my former life, I did a lot of travel, business travel outside of Saskatchewan. It afforded me the opportunity to visit other parts of Canada, other parts of the world, Asia, South America, Europe. And one of the things I used to be proud to talk about more than anything else as an unofficial ambassador of Saskatchewan was how proud I was to be from Saskatchewan, the birthplace of Medicare, and so many other great firsts. Not only did we possess true statesmen and premiers like Alan Blakeney and Roy Romanow, who ensured that there was a charter for all Canadians that we could be proud of and that truly reflected the interests of Saskatchewan people. We punched above our weight in all aspects of social innovation and sound fiscal policy, whether that be the introduction of the first human rights bill in North America and the revamping of our education system, introducing labour laws that protected workers. Now that's something that works for everyone. Labour legislation that protects against hazardous materials was developed first here in Saskatchewan. We struck a new deal for resource development that benefited residents of Saskatchewan's north. And the members opposite want to talk as though they're the ones responsible for the way that we are ground breakers on Indigenous inclusion. And that is a proud piece of our Saskatchewan history as New Democrats, and I don't think that should be forgotten. We electrified rural Saskatchewan. We created crown corporations as well that truly worked for everyone. We had technological innovations in fibre optics led by SaskTel. And of course, not last but not least, world-leading technological advancements in high energy efficiency homes by the Saskatchewan Research Council, and many other innovations by that cutting-edge organization. The list goes on. It goes on and it goes on. So many reasons for me to be proud of being from Saskatchewan. And I don't know why I have to keep saying this, but I'm proud to promote our rich resource endowment. My career was based on that endowment, that legacy here in Saskatchewan, whether it be potash and uranium to the rare earth metals we need to catalyze the clean energy transition. These are things to be proud of. And I was proud to speak to people from across the world, people in Ottawa, Vancouver, wherever I went, about how our resources were ensuring that we provided for social progress for Saskatchewan people. And all of this, while ensuring environmental protections. We weren't making a bargain here of one over the other. We were ensuring we had robust legislation and a credible regulatory framework that offered stability and certainty for investment, people, by companies sincerely focused on both environmental and social governance and earning the social license they depend upon to be able to sell their commodities in a competitive marketplace. And now, Mr. Speaker, I know I've hit a nerve over on that other side. Judging by the heckling I'm starting to hear but quite can't discern from across the way. But let me be clear. Let me be clear. We don't have economic progress without sound regulatory and environmental legislation. The companies that are coming here, and I can say this on great authority as someone who has worked in the industry, companies are not going to come and invest in Saskatchewan if they aren't confident that we have sound and stable regulatory policy. It's just that simple. Now, as I say, at the time, these were the things that I was very proud to represent and speak on, because these were the things that made Saskatchewan great. These were the things that made me proud to be from Saskatchewan. But now, Mr. Speaker, I want to borrow a term from our illustrious Minister of Public Safety and Corrections, who says, now we're infamous internationally, but not for our proud accomplishments, I'm sorry to say, but for all the wrong reasons instead. We're infamous for attempting to kick a young Indigenous man off the front lawns of the legislative grounds for the simple desire to draw attention to high rates of youth suicides in Indigenous communities. The member for Cumberland spoke earlier today in question period on that very issue from a report from the FSIN about the high rates of suicide in Indigenous communities. Not something for us to be proud of, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We're infamous, and I'm going back a little ways in your political memories, but you will recall we're infamous for having our Chief Medical Officer break down crying last fall because of Saskatchewan having the worst COVID death rate in the entire country. Can you imagine how that felt? To feel so crestfallen, so impotent, so powerless to invoke health policy measures that protected the people of this great province, literally brought to tears. That was one short year ago. And that was not a proud moment. That was a moment when we made national headlines. Let's remember. We were infamous once again. We're infamous for penning white papers so poorly conceived and constructed that news columnists call it pidgin English. The math so dubious that economists give it a failing grade. The twisted narrative so convoluted one wonders how it might draw a straight line to anything, much less honestly reflect the vital interests of Saskatchewan people. And you heard last night from the member from Saskatoon Eastview who drew attention to some of the commentary that has been shared in the news media on that white paper, even by conservative politicos. And I'm sure you'll recall the reference to Howard Anglin, who was a former Deputy Chief of Staff to Stephen Harper. And what did he have to say about that white paper? He called it shoddy. He said that drawing the line is a new low in political communications in Canada. It is doubtful that any government in the history of Confederation, federal, provincial, or municipal, has published something so badly written. He goes on to say that the text is not so much spoiled by errors, but composed of them. This is a white paper that is, ostensibly intended to be a thought piece and put out the issues and the desires of government, and yet we had a document that was incoherent. It made no sense. And now today, of course, we see a piece of legislation tabled to sort of further on that agenda. And yet, and I won't speak a lot about it here today because I know we'll debate it next week in session, but I mean, it's this notion of, being a nation within a nation and what that affords us as a people here in Saskatchewan. And when I think about that and the flimsy arguments that it's based upon and the things that it's ignoring, it's just making us another laughingstock. There's nothing here to be proud of in terms of statesmanhood and ensuring that this government is looking after the best interests of Saskatchewan, when instead it is really just playing political games, I'm afraid. Using it as a form of distraction from the real issues that are facing the people of Saskatchewan. And I'm sorry to say that it leaves very little for us to be proud of. Now, I want to go back to what I was saying earlier. I'm going to move off the issue of the white paper for now. I might come back to it later if there's time, but I want to get to the matter in which this throne speech was introduced here in the Assembly. Unfortunately, I was not able to be here that day. I was home convalescing. You may hear it in my voice still, but I watched the throne speech from home, and it wasn't until afterwards that I learned about the attendance of Colin Thatcher here in the Assembly. And I know I certainly would have been shocked, dismayed, and in disbelief to have seen him present here in the Assembly. And here we are again, infamous. We have an infamous wife killer invited to the Assembly, a former Conservative cabinet minister, and at a throne speech that was supposed to be a focused, tough-on-crime agenda, and yet they're sitting next to a police chief. We have a convicted killer, a convicted wife killer, an individual who has never acknowledged his crimes. And worse than that, we had a member from Lumsden, a parliamentary secretary, a former cabinet minister. We had the Premier himself, and we had the Minister of Public Safety, all defending his presence here in the Assembly. An absolute new low for this government. And while I am relieved that after 5 days of soul-searching and international condemnation for such a deplorable act, that we finally had the Premier be pressured into making an unequivocal apology, something I called for him to do over Twitter, and I like to think I maybe had a little something to do with that. But I know that the calls were coming from far and wide, from, within his own family, etc. But you know what, Mr. Deputy Speaker? It shouldn't take 5 days. It shouldn't take international condemnation. This is a question of moral integrity. This is a question of understanding right from wrong. It's a question of understanding what that individual represented to the women of this province, to all of the families who have been affected by intimate partner violence and femicide here in Saskatchewan, a province, a nation within a nation with the highest rates of domestic violence in the country. Now, is that what makes us distinct as a society? The fact that we have the highest rates of crime and violence, illiteracy, poverty, food bank usage? I mean, none of these indicators are things to be proud of. And to allow a convicted killer still serving lifetime sentence. Yeah, sure, he's out on parole, but he's been convicted for life. And he was allowed to come and sit in this assembly, to have the honor and the privilege of being present in this assembly on the day of a throne speech by the King's representative. I mean, what could be more sacred, more hallowed than this assembly on that day? And that was a slap in the face. And the fact that that was wasn't immediately apparent to the government side, and they went out into the gallery or the front rotunda and defended that and doubled down on the defense of those actions is astounding. It's absolutely astounding. It's deflected from the agenda of the government, and it was not a proud day, yet again. Members opposite, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've been listening to their comments over the last couple of days, and they chide about, oh, you guys are so negative. Why don't you ever have anything, positive to say? And yeah, I started my speech by talking about how proud I am of my constituency. I'm proud of my work in the resource sector. I'm proud of the industries and businesses that are working hard to ensure a vibrant economy. But there's a whole lot of denial going on that side of the House. And when we can't acknowledge our failings, when we can't acknowledge our mistakes, when we can't acknowledge that this is not growth that works for everyone, we have fundamental problems. And it's our job as an opposition to point those out, to hold you to account, to remind you of the indicators that matter. The members opposite want to pull, statistics and figures out of thin air to substantiate, just how great things are in Saskatchewan. And believe me, I want nothing more. I want nothing more than for Saskatchewan to have a strong, vibrant economy and growth that works for everyone. I want to be from a province whose interests are being represented on the national stage. But, and this is the thing, but You know, when you ignore the plight of your citizens, when you ignore the fact that young Indigenous people in Saskatchewan have lost hope and are turning to suicide as their only avenue, well, maybe we have a problem. And I mean, I couldn't be more understated in saying that. You know, these are issues that need to be confronted, not swept under the rug and explained away by rising boats. And it takes actual effort. It takes funding, operational funding for second stage transitional housing. It takes programs that are going to give our youth hope, that is going to address the mental health crisis and the drug crisis we are facing here in Saskatchewan. That is how we will get to the roots of crime. And when you have a convicted murderer sitting in the Assembly, I ask myself, you know, like, who are you trying to protect? Who are you actually trying to protect when you talk about being tough on crime, and yet, you know, domestic violence, you know, crime, family on family is being fueled by a drug crisis here that is breaking down the very fabrics of our communities and our families, and this government has been impotent to do anything about it. And I don't think it helps to deny that these issues are in front of us, that these issues are real, that they need to be addressed, and we need funding commitments to ensure that the work can be done, to make life better, to make this a province again that we can be proud to be from, so that we can have headlines in international papers that once again talk about the great things that are happening in Saskatchewan. You know, a place, and you know, here's a bold vision, you know, a province that truly takes care of its people and brings up the most disadvantaged through legislation and programming that meets those needs in tangible ways, so that we do truly all benefit as a province, and that, you know, it is growth that works for everyone. And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will not be supporting the motion to accept this throne speech. I will be supporting the amendment that has been introduced by the member for Regina Rosemont. And with that, I will conclude my remarks.